What if everything you've been told about capitalism, and everything you've been warned about socialism, is only half the story? What if the true battle isn't between systems, but between the hidden mechanisms buried inside them, mechanisms that quietly dictate who rises, who falls, and who pays the price when the system breaks? Tonight we're going deep into an uncomfortable truth. Both capitalism and socialism have official results you read in textbooks. And then there are the real results, the ones no one talks about. The results that governments cover behind statistics, that economists hide inside technical language, that corporations and political parties twist to their advantage. And yet, every major economic crisis of the last 150 years, everyone has exposed these hidden consequences again and again. So, what's the truth? Why does every system seem to promise prosperity, but deliver cycles of boom, bust, collapse, and control? To answer that, we need to step back not just to the 20th century, but to the moment the world first realized that money, power, and ideology were about to collide. Before capitalism and socialism became political weapons, before they were bumper stickers and talking points, they were simply two different attempts to answer one question: how do we build a society where everyone benefits? Capitalism's early thinkers Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and John Stuart Mill believed that individual choices and market incentives could create prosperity. But this was during a time when the world was rapidly industrializing, when factories replaced farms, and when wealth began concentrating at unprecedented speeds. Meanwhile, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels looked at the same industrial world and saw something different: workers who powered entire economies, yet owned nothing. Their answer wasn't more markets. Their answer was a complete rewiring of society, a system where the economy is directed by the public, not private owners. Capitalism trusted individuals, socialism trusted society, and for a moment, both visions sounded reasonable. But history had a twist waiting for both of them, one that neither Smith nor Marx truly predicted. Because once these systems left theory, once real governments, real nations, and real power structures started implementing them, the outcomes changed. And that's where the story gets complicated. Capitalism's early promise, and its first cracks. In the 1800s, capitalism did something revolutionary. It created growth on a scale never seen before in human history. Railroads, steel production, shipping, banking, global trade. The world was suddenly connected. But the same system also created cycles of mass unemployment, extreme inequality, factory towns where workers lived in poverty, financial panics that wiped out entire industries overnight. In 1873, the world experienced the Panic of 1873, a depression lasting nearly 2 decades in some countries. Then came 1893, another collapse. And finally, 1929, the Great Depression, capitalism's biggest failure. By the early 20th century, millions asked a terrifying question: is capitalism inherently unstable? Governments panicked, populations radicalized, and into this chaos stepped the rival system that had been quietly growing in the shadows: socialism's rise. A promise of fairness, socialism emerged as the counter-reaction. If capitalism produced crises and inequality, socialism promised security, equality, shared ownership, stability, and an end to exploitation. Workers around the world were inspired, but the first major test wasn't theoretical. It was the Russian Revolution of 1917. Lenin's Bolsheviks attempted to build the world's first socialist state, but real socialism required something Marx didn't fully predict: centralization, massive centralization. To redistribute wealth, someone had to control it. To plan the economy, someone had to direct it. And very quickly, the system meant to empower workers, placed immense power into a centralized state. This was the first sign of a pattern we still see today. Ideals attract followers, but incentives shape outcomes. Capitalism started with free markets and drifted toward corporate power. Socialism started with equality and drifted toward state control. But the real turning point, the moment these systems revealed their true strengths and weaknesses, came in the 20th century as defining economic battles. Capitalism reinvents itself. The New Deal era. After the Great Depression, capitalism was on life support. Confidence was gone. Banks had failed. Millions were homeless. What saved the system wasn't markets, it was government intervention. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal transformed the U.S. economy by regulating banks, creating social programs, supporting labor rights, building massive public infrastructure. It's ironic. Capitalism survived by borrowing ideas from socialism. But this hybrid system, market economy plus government safety, Net created something new, a capitalism that was productive, regulated, and for a time, stable. From 1945 to 1971, something miraculous happened. Inequality shrank, wages rose, middle classes grew, productivity exploded, living standards doubled. It was capitalism's golden age. But hidden beneath the prosperity was a weakness that no one saw coming. Socialism's rise. The Soviet experiment scales up. Meanwhile, the USSR industrialized at an astonishing pace. From a rural empire to a nuclear superpower in less than 40 years. To many, this was proof that socialism worked. Central planning could build factories, roads, dams, and cities faster than private markets. And for a while, the socialist growth model seemed unstoppable. But then came the consequences. Planning worked for building things, but it failed at allocating resources, predicting needs, or rewarding innovation. By the 1970s, the cracks were visible. Shortages of basic goods, low-quality products, no incentives for improvement, massive bureaucratic waste. While capitalism struggled with inflation, socialism struggled with stagnation, and both systems approached their breaking point. Capitalism's breaking point, 1971, and the death of the gold standard in 1971. President Nixon made a decision that changed global capitalism permanently. He ended the convertibility of the US dollar to gold. This event, fairly discussed today, transformed money into something new, a currency backed not by gold, but by trust, debt, and government authority. Suddenly, debt could expand infinitely, banks could create money far more freely. Governments could run unlimited deficits, financial markets exploded in size, capitalism became less about production, and more about finance. This was capitalism's silent transformation, a shift from creating wealth to leveraging debt, a shift that has shaped every recession since socialism's breaking point, 1989, and the collapse of the Soviet bloc. The USSR's downfall wasn't a single event. It was a slow erosion, economic stagnation, declining innovation, consumer shortages, military overspending, a rigid political elite disconnected from reality. By 1989, the system imploded, not because people rejected equality, but because central planning couldn't compete with market dynamism. The conditions had reversed. Capitalism was dynamic but unstable. Socialism was stable but suffocating. Both systems were failing in their own ways. This is where the real results emerge. The ones rarely mentioned. Capitalism's fallout after 1971. Capitalism created enormous wealth at the top, slower wage growth for workers, skyrocketing debt levels, repeated financial crises, outsourcing and labor displacement, trillion-dollar bailouts to financial institutions. The wealth gap widened dramatically. In the US, the top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. Global corporate profits have soared, while wages remain stagnant. Debt is now the engine of growth, not productivity. Capitalism didn't collapse, it evolved into something more unequal, more financialized, and more fragile. After the collapse of the USSR, millions fell into poverty during the transition. State assets were sold for pennies to oligarchs. Political instability spread across former socialist states. Social safety nets vanished almost overnight in countries like Venezuela. Authoritarian leaders revived state-controlled models, but again, centralization turned into corruption and collapse. In some socialist democracies, however, like Scandinavia, a hybrid approach emerged. Capitalism plus heavy social welfare, and these nations consistently rank among the world's happiest and most stable. The lesson: pure capitalism and pure socialism both fail. Hybrids can work, but only under certain conditions, and only for so long. Governments tried to rescue capitalism with bailouts, stimulus packages, deregulation, interest rate manipulation, quantitative easing, but each solution created new vulnerabilities: higher debt, more market bubbles, greater inequality, weaker social mobility. Socialist experiments tried reforms too: more market freedoms, partial privatization, decentralization, mixed ownership models. But these often triggered corruption, inefficiency, political disputes, economic instability. Both systems failed to solve the same underlying problem. How do you create a system that rewards innovation without concentrating power? How do you protect people without killing incentives? This is the paradox neither ideology fully solves. Today, the patterns are shockingly familiar. Pattern 1. Capitalism's boom and bust cycle continues. 2000 dot-com crash, 2008 financial crisis, 2020 pandemic market shock, record global household debt, record corporate debt, record government debt. The world is now more leveraged than ever. Pattern 2. Socialism still struggles with scale. Centralized economies face shortages, state-owned enterprises lag behind private competitors. Political control limits innovation, redistribution becomes politically weaponized. Pattern 3. Hybrid systems slowly drift. Social democracies drift toward higher taxes, higher public spending, slower growth. Market economies drift toward monopolies, financialization, political capture, the truth no one talks about. Every system drifts, every system evolves, every system contains flaws that amplify over time. And the world is now entering a new era, one that blends the problems of both systems without fully achieving the benefits of either. Takeaway number 1. No system works as designed. Capitalism and socialism both promise ideal outcomes, but real outcomes depend on incentives, power structures, and human behavior. Systems don't fail because the theory is wrong. They fail because people aren't perfect. Takeaway number 2. Hybrid economies work best, but only temporarily. Every successful economy today is a blend. Capitalist productivity, socialist safety nets, state regulation, private innovation, but hybrids drift over time toward inequality or inefficiency. Takeaway number 3. The real divide isn't capitalism versus socialism, it's centralized power versus distributed power. Any system can work if power is balanced, and any system collapses when power concentrates too much at the top. Final warning: the world is now repeating the same patterns. Rising inequality, growing public frustration, political polarization, debt-driven growth weakening, social trust. History shows what comes next. Systems break when people stop believing in them. We are closer to that point today than at any time in the last century. If you want to understand the hidden mechanics behind global economies, how money is created, how debt shapes nations, and how financial systems evolve, make sure to subscribe, hit like, and share this video with someone who wants the full story, not the simplified version. The next episode dives even deeper into the hidden forces shaping our world. You won't want to miss it.